foot in front of the other. I can't see what's coming. Everything in front of me and all around me is blurry. A thick fog hovers over the horizon. 1 foot in front of the other. In front of me is only more questions, only more fog, only more darkness.
1 foot in front of the other. What waits for me, the not knowing, the emptiness, the doubt. I can't go backwards, only forwards. 1 foot in front of the other. I'm on the edge of something new, somewhere I've never been before. 1 foot in front of the other, into the unknown.
Into the unknown. Those words aren't just for Elsa the Ice Queen anymore, but they feel more like the soundtrack of our life right now. We don't know what the future holds, when we'll be able to see our friends again. We don't know if we'll get to go back to school in the fall or start our freshman year of college on campus. We don't know when it will be safe to hug or see our grandparents again. There's a whole lot we just don't know. This is all uncharted territory. None of us have had to live through a global pandemic before. We're all dealing with these circumstances that no one saw coming. And in the face of all of the fear and unknown and uncertainty and the unanswered questions, I think what a lot of us feel first is fear. Fear of the future, fear of the unknown, fear of the worst case scenario. We fear what hasn't happened yet, and we fear what could happen.
Let's talk about fear. I try to do everything I can to not feel fear. I try to play everything safe. I'm really good at coming up with all the possible negative outcomes that could come from anything. Anybody else? Like right now, I'm the person that only goes to the store when I absolutely have to, because I feel the fear of being around people. I'm a mask on kind of guy. And some of that is okay. Being afraid of getting sick is a healthy fear, and it makes us make some good decisions. But that fear becomes unhealthy when it leads to a constant anxiety, always being on high alert. There are some days where I can just imagine how terrible it would be if everyone I knew got sick. And I do that because I feel like I can prepare myself for the worst possible outcome. I think I get some control out of the situation if I think about what all could go wrong. But really, I end up paralyzed and I can't do anything because I've gotten so in my head about something that hasn't happened.
Fear is a funny thing because it's not always bad. Fear tells us when we're in danger and when something's not right. It also shows us our limits and where we need God. But fear is a problem when I let it make decisions for me. And what I mean is, what drives a lot of my decisions and how I live is this fear of failing. I don't like not being good at something, so it holds me back or it keeps me stuck. Like when I get invited with some friends to try something new. I'll sit on the sidelines while everyone else has fun because I'm afraid I'll look stupid when I try it and I'm not good at it. Or I put this crazy pressure on myself to be the best and to make people proud of me. I won't be able to fall asleep and my mind will race with ideas and things that I could have done better. I'll put the expectation of perfection on myself because failing just isn't an option. Fear also has a way of shrinking our faith, of cutting it off at the ankles and paralyzing us so that we can't put 1 foot in front of the other. Fear makes it especially hard to trust God, especially when we're faced with the unknown. So what do? How do we have faith in the face of fear? When I go to the Bible for answers or some help for how to deal with all of the unknown in my life right now, I'm reminded that we're not alone. But the people in the pages of the Bible were faced with the unfamiliar all of the time. Over and over again, they were asked to go places that they had never seen before, asked to do things that they were unsure of. So what did they do? How did they fight fear? What were their weapons against that paralyzing feeling when we don't know what's next?
For a little context of the story we are looking at when Israel, that's God's chosen people, are wandering through the desert to get to the promised land, the place God was going to give his people to live. This guy Moses had led God's people out of Egypt, and now he was going to have to pass on his leadership. And Joshua has been watching Moses do all of this. He's been watching him be this incredible leader. Like, he had watched Moses talk with God and tell God's people what they needed to hear. He had seen Moses be the guy that was leading all of them through the desert, and when everyone got frustrated or tired, pushing them all to go on. He had sat beside Moses and watched him be this leader. And now this leader was gone, and someone else was going to have to lead. The Bible says this, it says, after the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I am giving them." God chooses Joshua to take over from Moses. Joshua had been on the sidelines of everything that Moses had done so far. He had seen Moses be the leader this whole time, but now Joshua was going to have to step off of the sidelines and be the guy. He was going to be the leader.
The passing of the torch was no small task. This was really the assignment in front of Joshua. He would have to lead more than 2 million people into this new land and conquer it. A land that they had never seen before. A land that their ancestors had wandered the desert for 40 years to finally find. A land that they've heard bedtime stories about as generations passed down stories of this land that was promised to them. And Joshua had big shoes to fill. Moses came with a reputation. He cast a really large shadow. Moses was one of the greats. It was him who got the 10 Commandments passed from God. He led the Israelites through on dry land when the Red Sea split in half. Moses was somebody that we will tell stories about for years and years to come. This is who Joshua had to replace. And so I wonder if in that moment when God looks at Joshua and says, "It's you, you're up, you're the guy," I wonder if that fear and insecurity made his palms sweat and his hands shake. I wonder if doubts like, am I cut out for this? What if I let him down? What if they don't like me as much as they like Moses? Can I really do this? I wonder if doubts like that flash behind his eyes.
Have you ever felt this way? Like maybe you were given some leadership, captain or first chair or the lead in the musical, and it freaked you out a little bit, not knowing if you'd be able to keep up with everyone's expectations. Maybe you have an older sibling that was good at everything. Good grades, good athlete, good everything. There were all these expectations that you would be just as great, and you wonder if you could live up to them. Or maybe the thought of starting high school next year, or leaving home for college, or switching schools is terrifying and new and full of unknowns. And it just makes you wonder, can I really do this? What if I let my parents down? Am I cut out for it? I feel like I always work from this place of fear and being afraid when I start something new. And like even with things that don't really matter that much, when I was a senior in high school, I became the leader of our student section. It got like passed down to me. And if you think about it, like it's kind of a thing that's no big deal and not a lot of pressure and doesn't matter. But there were these guys before me that started like leading college student sections. Like we're on ESPN and it was so cool and I wanted to live up to that expectation. And I remember before the first football game of my senior year, literally my stomach was in knots. Like I was like hurting because I was so afraid that I wasn't gonna live up to these expectations of all these people that had come before me and done all these cool things. And I didn't think I was gonna be good enough.
I had a similar moment about 3 years ago when I was told that I was going to take over as the student director at the Lafayette campus. I was terrified because names like Ben Foote and Zach Weingartner had the job before me. Talk about reputation and big shoes to fill. They were amazing, and I was so scared that I was always going to live in their shadow. I also had no idea what that job meant. I had no idea what I was doing and what the future would look like. And all of this fear and insecurity, it started all of this head trash in my head, and I began asking questions like, am I really cut out for this? Or what if I let them down? What if they don't like me as much as they liked Ben? Can I really do this?
Our fear, doubt, and insecurity, it doesn't surprise God. We see in the story that God tells Joshua not once, but 3 separate times to not be afraid, but to be courageous. That's because God isn't surprised that we feel fear or are afraid of things. Like He's not surprised when we're afraid of times that are uncertain or when we're scared when things get strange. He doesn't condemn us for feeling fear. Like He doesn't tell us that we shouldn't feel it. But instead, He says that that's okay, but I want you to have courage.
God gives us more than just platitudes. He gives us more than just feel-good sayings. He gives us a reason to be strong and courageous. That day in the desert, God told Joshua, "This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And the same is true for us today. God, the creator of heaven and earth, our good and perfect Father, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, he gives us his presence, his help, his company. God is with us in all the places we go. He is there with us, especially in the places when we can't see what's ahead. Here's what Joshua knew. Joshua knew that courage comes from the company of God.
God tells Joshua to not be afraid because he doesn't have to do it alone. Right? Like Joshua doesn't have to be good enough. He doesn't have to be strong enough. He doesn't have to be so much like Moses to get it done. God tells Joshua to not be afraid because he's going to be with God. It wasn't just Joshua leading the Israelites across the Jordan River. It was Joshua with God leading the Israelites across the Jordan River and into the Promised Land. It wasn't just me standing in front of a bunch of people. It was me with God having enough courage to stand in front of a bunch of people. It wasn't just Lindsay having to lead Lafayette alone. It was Lindsay with God stepping into that. So whatever unknown you're facing, you're not alone. The Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You aren't moving away to college all by yourself. You and God are moving to a new town.
You aren't alone in your bed wondering if you can do it all over again. You, with God, are facing the depression.
You aren't walking into the first day of school on your own. You and God are walking those hallways together.
You aren't having the hard conversation with your parents about the addiction or the secrets all by yourself. You and God are sitting at the kitchen table coming clean.
Our courage doesn't come from knowing what the future holds, or having all the answers to our questions, or the absence of uncertainty. It comes from the company of God. Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. The Lord your God is with you into the unknown.